Welcome to You Make the Difference. I'm Wanda Walker, and today I'm talking to Chief Detmar with the LaGrange Police Department. He's going to bring us up to date on the crime activity in LaGrange and also the gang activity. Welcome to the show, Chief Detmar.
Well, thank you, Wanda, and it's always a pleasure to visit with you, so I appreciate the opportunity to be here this morning.
Yes. Would you give us kind of an update of what you see the state of LaGrange being as far as crime?
It's kind of a mixed bag. If you look at year to year, oftentimes what you see are significant changes in the trends. If you look at it over time, you get a sense of which way the community is going. For example, I think last year we had somewhere around 70 or 80 aggravated assaults. If you look back 20 years ago, we had 150 in a year.
So we're doing better.
So we're doing better. The concern, though, is in the last several years, what we've seen is for our community, significant increases in gang-related activity. And that gang-related activity usually plays out in an increase in robberies and aggravated assaults.
So we're concerned about the gang activity here, and you recently were at the City Council meeting and actually stated that we have a gang problem now.
Right. Communities all around the metro area of Atlanta and throughout the nation for about the last 3 to 5 years have started to see increases in their gang activity. We've always had gang issues to deal with, but generally they've been local, and as a result, we've not needed the kind of resources that we find ourselves needing now because of the national affiliation with Gangster Disciples, the Bloods, the Crips, where these local gangs have affiliated with national gangs. And also we've seen some members of these gangs move into our community. So as a result of that, working with the district attorney's office and jurisdictions around the area, not just in our county, but also in East Alabama and Coweta County, Carroll County, Columbus, Muskogee. We've identified those things that we believe we'll need in order to be more effective in dealing with the gang issue. And so we went to council and asked for some additional resources.
Mm-hmm. So what are some of the proactive things that you've done to deal with the gang issue?
Well, for about probably 10, 15 years, we've made available a gang education program to the schools so that we can train faculty members. We also make that education available to different community groups and civic groups, churches. We also, in the last several years, have worked closely with the DA's office in developing a task force, if you will, a gang committee that's made up of different jurisdictions, from the Sheriff's Office to Hogansville PD, West Point PD, surrounding PDs in the area, along with some federal partnerships. We've expanded our Special Investigations Unit to focus not only on drugs and crimes involving alcohol and vice, but also now they're the ones that are also charged with addressing the gang activity. We also have a crime suppression unit that we've had up and running probably for 5 or 6 years. And we've shifted their focus onto crimes of violence, and particularly those crimes that involve gang members. The result is, when we started this effort, probably 2012, 2013, I think that year we made 29 gang-related cases, and we had, as a result, the district attorney prosecute those as gang cases. In 2014, we made 66 gang-related cases, and that's for the calendar year. And then so far this year, through end of July, We've made 49 gang cases, so I suspect that we'll probably make somewhere in the area of 70. Those crimes that we've identified as being gang-related, we've got about a 71 clearance rate on, which is fairly significant. I believe that the agencies in the metro area run about a 50% clearance area rate. I think that's a result of the communication that we have with the different jurisdictions, and then the very robust position that the district attorney's office has taken in prosecuting these cases. And then, frankly, the judges have stepped up also, and you know, when the evidence is before them and the individual is either found or pled guilty, have issued sentences that I think make it clear that this is not going to be tolerated in our communities.
Yes, and when you bring that before the judge, you have significant evidence that these people are participating in the gang. Is that right?
Yes. Yeah. Sometimes then I'll talk to groups, and there's a notion that you know, somebody's smoking marijuana and we put a gang charge on them. There has to be a charge, a predicate charge they call it, or the initial charge that has to be proven, and then the additional count of the gang, we have to be able to prove that that criminal activity occurred as a direct result of being involved in a gang.
Yes.
So those two separate elements have to be proven.
And you were telling me that lots of times when the people see the evidence that you have, they'll go ahead and plea with that because they understand that you have the evidence to support that charge.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. I just want to bring out a point that I found interesting in a meeting that I was in with you, is that during the time that you've been police chief, which has been 20 years, there has not been a death. The police have not shot anybody and killed them.
Correct.
Yes.
Yeah, we've had some police-involved shootings, but we've not had a police-involved shooting that resulted in a fatality. Now, we've had fatalities. We've had homicides. We've had, I think, 52, sadly, homicides since I've been here. And
in the community.
In the community.
Yes.
But none of those are a result of a police officer shooting someone.
Yes.
In fact, our use of force is relatively low. People frequently think, when they think of law enforcement or think of the police, you know, they think that, you know, we're out here chasing bad guys and that's all we do, 12 hours a day. They work 12-hour shifts. But in fact, law enforcement's kind of a misnomer. It's more of police services, because about 15% of what we do has to do with, you know, strict law enforcement, taking somebody into custody. Most of what we do is really social work. We're making referrals, we're mediating, we're problem solving, we're working with people to help them get through a difficult time. So of the 60,000 calls a year or law enforcement or police contacts that we have a year, about 6,000 result in an arrest. Something occurs less than arrest. Even, you know, we may have enough to arrest, but rather than arrest, we'll write charges on a citation and release them in lieu of taking them to jail. So, you know, we have, you know, a commitment to using the least intrusive way of dealing with someone that's involved in a difficult time, and that could be either someone that's you know, a suspect in a crime, or someone that you know, is just having a tough go of it, and we're trying to help them through that. Yes,
and I want to go back to the fact that there hasn't been a death because of the police officers. I want to ask you, is that uncommon?
No. It's, matter of fact, those are the facts that, for whatever reason, have not been placed out in the public. Nationwide, if you look at what the police do, they probably respond to 150 million contacts with citizens a year. Of those, they'll make somewhere between 12 and 13 million arrests. Of those 12 and 13 million arrests, they'll shoot or they'll kill someone in about 400 to 500 times.
Wow.
So 400 to 500 times there's results in somebody being fatally injured by the police out of 12 million or 13 million arrests. It's about, frankly, it's about the same number of people that are struck by lightning a year.
Really?
Yeah, are killed by police a year.
Wow.
But you would not know it
Right.
in the way that. And the other thing is how it breaks down demographically. There's been a lot of emphasis placed on the race of those that are killed, and in fact, according to the Department of Justice, and I think this was true when Attorney General Holder was Attorney General. I think this was the data that came out. 61% of those that are killed are actually Caucasian. But there's a notion that it's much different than that and much higher
Yes.
in the African American community. The sad part is that if you have 500 or 400 police involved shootings a year and 10% are very bad, and that's one a week then being showcased somewhere around the country. And so that's a challenge that all of us have to meet in terms of explaining that that's not representative of the law enforcement community generally, and it's certainly not representative of what the men and women here do that are committed to service.
Yes, and I know just from being involved with different things with the police department, I just love the heart of the policemen here. And
police women.
And police women, that's right. So I would like for you to share your vision for the city. What would you like to happen in our city?
Well, I guess when I think of the police, to me, an effective police department is one that people don't think about. People should not be getting up in the morning and thinking about government. They should be thinking about being able to get on with their lives and not have anyone interfere with it.
Yes.
Either someone that's a criminal or someone that's troublesome or someone that's a member of the government. They should be able to go about their lives, but at the point that they need a service, they ought to be confident that when they call, that they're going to be taken care of, and they're going to have someone that not only is going to look at their problem, and in many cases for us it's going to be taking an incident report for a crime, but will be familiar with the resources in this community that they can make an effective referral so that those folks can get the kind of help that they need that put them back on track where they can get about their pursuit of happiness.
Yes, and I know you're about to do a Police Chief Academy.
A Police Academy.
Police Academy.
Police Academy.
That's right.
We already have a police chief.
Yeah, you do. All right, so tell me what you want to accomplish with that.
The Citizen Police Academy has been something that the LaGrange Police Department has done for over 20 years. They had that program when I arrived, and it's something that we've happily continued. And it runs, depends on how many holidays are around, but it runs generally somewhere between 10 and 11 weeks. And it introduces the citizen into the components of the criminal justice system with an emphasis on the police. So they'll learn about the various divisions in the police department. They'll learn of the kind of equipment that we use. They'll learn of the accountability and the training that the officers receive. They'll also learn about the challenges that the sheriff has in running a jail, 911
Yes.
center. The district attorney or a staff member always has an evening to discuss their role and what their responsibilities are. So you come away after a couple of months. I think it runs usually from about 6 to 8:30 or 9.
So one time a week?
Yeah, it's usually, I think this year it'll be on Tuesday.
Okay.
So one Tuesday evening a week, and you'll come away with that as a citizen with an appreciation for, what resources and services are available and the challenges of the contemporary criminal justice system.
Yes, and will they get to ride with a police officer?
Yes, yes, we always have a ride-along component, so they'll ride with an officer and be able to see the various kind of calls they handle and the tasks that they're required to do.
Yes, and I know that also you have started a police chief community outreach committee. Tell me about that committee and what you hope to accomplish through that.
That was something that we started about a year and a half ago. I have an opportunity to meet with different people in different settings, but I rarely have an opportunity to meet with a collection of people that represent different interests. And so I was talking with my staff, and we thought it would be helpful if we contacted various people that we deal with communities frequently, and set up some sort of a structure where we can explain to them what the police are doing, they can give us feedback. Well, it started out as something that we would meet, and we'd have a dozen folks that we had selected. And after about the first meeting, the folks we had selected thought that there ought to be other folks involved, and now it's expanded. Sometimes we have 40 or 50 people that many of them I didn't know until I was introduced at the meeting, but it's really turned into more of a community forum for me to listen, and then more importantly, for the folks that are there to be able to see the different resources that are available or interests that are available in our community to tackle some difficult problems and working together to do that. So it's called the Community Outreach Committee, but it's more of a community forum now that just happens to meet at the police department. I actually kind of like the way it's evolved. I thought it was going to be a bit more structured, and it would be an emphasis on the police, where it's really morphed into a lot less structure and more emphasis on what we can do as a community working together. And I kind of like the direction that it's taken, so I'm very enthused about it.
Yes, and Pastor Rowland and Dr. Tucker are on that committee.
That's correct.
And they've done some work in Calumet. Tell us about the Calumet community and their work.
Calumet community is kind of a mixed neighborhood in terms of you have people that have lived there all their lives, and then you have rental property. And oftentimes it's a challenge for those folks that have lived there all them lives to create the kind of cohesiveness in a neighborhood that you want.
Yes.
If you have frequent people coming in and out of houses because they're renting, and maybe they're passing by there while they're waiting for a house somewhere else, or a job that's temporary, or whatever the reason is. And as a result, there's been some areas that just have been troublesome for neighbors. And Dr. Tucker, who was raised in LaGrange and then left and went on and got his PhD and worked in Atlanta and retired, came back to the community, and his intent was just to be there a couple of years and kind of see what he could do. And it ended up, he ended up buying a house there, and he and Pastor Rowland, who also live in the area, have really kind of rolled up their sleeves and demonstrated the difference that one or two people can make that are committed to doing the things necessary to affect change in a positive way. And so they came up with a plan for their neighborhood. They learned who the neighbors were. They learned who the difficult issues were, and didn't come with a laundry list to the city, but said in those areas that we had resources, in those areas where we had ordinances, and in those areas where the city had a responsibility, created a partnership that has been very effective. And if I had a vision, that would be to replicate that kind of community interest in neighborhoods that result in an engagement that recognizes that the most effective leadership in a neighborhood and in a community comes not from government, not from the police, but from the people that live there, with the police and government playing an enthusiastic, supportive role.
Yes, and so they were able to get a grant, I believe, to renovate the park.
Yeah, there was some grant money, and actually the city also was involved, and I think the city committed between grants and funding, $100,000 to take care of the park over there off of Union Street.
Yes,
yeah.
Yes, and so Chief Detmar, you have been involved in setting up different committees to work on different issues, and I know you set up a committee to work on mental health issues. And tell me what that resulted in.
Well, actually, I tapped a effective member of the community, and she took that ball, Wanda. Yes, I contacted Wanda, and she wanted to do something to help law enforcement. And one of the challenges that we deal with in law enforcement, and this is one of the sad challenges or sad facts when you look at how use of force is played out, is our country and nationally and at the state level and arguably at the community level have done a real disservice to our mentally ill. When we were a country of about 150 million, about half the population we are now, we're a little over, 300 million, maybe some say 320 million. We had 600,000 people in institutions receiving some sort of care for mental illness.
Yes.
And now we're a country of over 3 million, and we have less than 40,000. So we have 10% of the people receiving treatment, institutional treatment, inpatient treatment. We have less than 40,000 as a country of 3 million, over 3 million, compared to when we were 150 million, we had 600,000. So what we have found is because for a lot of reasons, the mentally ill have not been taken care of. What we have found is they get involved in mischief, they get involved in drug abuse, they commit crimes, they act out that result in a criminal violation. And so it's kind of been dropped on the laps of the police to handle this as a criminal issue. And as a result, the largest provider nationally and here in our state and here in our county, the largest provider of mental health treatment is Department of Corrections. The second are county jails.
Yes.
And that is not a way to deal with the mentally ill. It's a scandal, frankly. So, you and the group of folks that became interested in this issue worked with the police department, and as a result, we were able to go around to the different jurisdictions once identifying a program, which is mental health court.
Yes.
And get funding, despite the fact that it was not during the budget session. There was a compelling case made, and all the jurisdictions, except one, I think, pledged money to support that. And the program was so effective, I don't think we had to use all the money because we became eligible for grant funding. I believe there were initially 25 individuals that were identified as requiring significant mental health services that had been in jail numerous times. In fact, those 25 initial candidates that were placed in that program were responsible for almost 200 arrests. And I think in the 3 years now, going on 3 years, that we've had that program, I think we've had 3 arrests. So we have found an effective way, and I think there's more that needs to be done, but this is a significant first step.
That's remarkable, isn't it? And I remember when we were beginning to meet that Randy Nix said, I wonder if there's something like a mental health court, because drug court and DUI court have been so effective. And we had no idea at the time that there was a mental health court. But very soon, a lady showed up at the meetings that knew about mental health courts, and that was... You
guys made some tours around the state and came back with a good program.
Yes, and you really took the ball and went before the city councils and the county commissioners to gain funding for that. And
well, was it easy ball to take? You had it in a nice package.
Well, good. Good. And then I remember also that you initiated the Homeless Coalition.
Well, and that was kind of a recognition that just like dealing with the mentally ill is a issue with the jails. What we find oftentimes is homelessness
Yes.
is a product or a byproduct of mental illness. And so we brought, I just convened a meeting to ask if there was something we could do, and then kind of step back. The community has kind of really taken that on. I've had a very minor role in that. The police department, you know, sponsors the meetings and they use our facility, and I know Captain File is actively
Yes.
involved in that, but really I think we had more resources than people in the resource business knew we had, and it was getting folks together to leverage those resources in a way that would help address that homelessness issue.
Yes, but I remember that Kay Elam, who was running the Emmaus shelter at the time, had said she wanted to be on the Homeless Coalition. And so we contacted you to see if she could be a member of the coalition.
She ended up chair, didn't
Yeah, she did. And you said, well, we don't have one, but we can start one.
Yeah.
And so that has been effective in the community, and I think it will even grow and be more effective. Particularly, it started its effectiveness, I think, really with the Warman Centers.
Yes.
And the Warman Centers showed that there was a real need for homeless men to be housed, and the communities really stepped up, and even people donated property so that the men could be housed. And so
And the churches.
And the
have
churches.
stepped up.
Yes, and I remember in a meeting that I was in with you that you said that you had always wanted to work with the churches.
The faith community.
The faith community, yes. And so have you found that that's grown over the years? And I
see more engagement, not as much still as I'd like, but
Yes.
I see more. And the reason I like the engagement of the faith community is they can say things that many folks can't.
Yes.
And they have an ability to persuade and influence,
Yes.
unlike government.
Right.
And I think that for whatever reason, their role's been diminished over time, and I'd like to see them in a more active leadership role in community issues.
I would too. Well, thank you, Chief Detmar. And I'd like to thank you for watching You Make the Difference and remind you that you truly do. We'll see you next week.